The M42 Duster is from that generation of post-World War II equipment that entered service just in time to be the retired gear pulled out for Vietnam. In my opinion, it's one of the hardest looking pieces of SPAA. It's essentially an M41 Walker Bulldog light tank chassis with an open-top turret housing two M2A1 40mm Bofors autocannons. It entered service with the US in 1953 to replace the M19 multiple gun motor carriage, a similar concept but on an M24 Chaffee chassis. The Duster was one of the main self-propelled carriages employed by the Anti-Aircraft Artillery Automatic Weapons Battalion in the 1950s. Air defense was its #1 thing, but it was also doctrinally intended for the anti-surface role against land and water targets, and could be used as an impromptu indirect fire unit with the aid of a fire direction center. But direct fire support was the Duster's main use when it was brought out of active duty retirement during the Vietnam War. Its maximum hitting range, the maximum range at which hits could be expected, was 1,800 yards on average, or 1,645 meters. Although this depended on tracer observation, crew competency, and other factors. Textbook would be for a Duster to be sighted within 1,500 yards of a likely target. Extreme deterrent range, which was the burnout range of the tracers, was 3,500 to 5,500 yards, or 3,200 to 5,000 meters. The intent of firing at this range would be force enemy aircraft to evade, break formation, or abort their attack. The minimum tracking range, meanwhile, depended on the speed of the target, but the M42 could track an aircraft traveling 600 miles per hour at around 420 yards, or 384 meters. The Duster could in theory deliver short bursts at 240 rounds per minute, or 120 per gun. However, the guns would overheat after about 50 to 60 seconds at the maximum fire rate, requiring a barrel change that took about 3 minutes. Semi-automatic fire and firing individual guns to manage heat was also possible. The estimated life for each barrel was 12,000 rounds. The guns themselves were loaded via 4-round clips fed into an automatic loader that held 2 clips. The M42's internal ammo capacity positioned on either side of the guns was 192 rounds in 12 16-round cans. An additional 48 rounds could also be positioned between the driver and commander positions in the forward hull. In other words, about a minute's worth of ammo at the max fire rate was stored inside of the vehicle. 240 more rounds could be carried on the outside of the vehicle in 6 ammunition stowage boxes, 3 on each side of the vehicle. A 1.5-ton trailer was also provided per vehicle, which would carry more ammo. The M42 was employed in tandem with quad-mount 50 cal platforms. The M16A1 based on a half-track in infantry and armored divisions, and the trailered M55 in airborne divisions. The 50s complemented the M42 with close-in protection out to 800 yards or 731 meters, a little under half of the Duster, but at much higher fire rates of 400 to 600 rounds per minute per gun. If all guns were firing, that's 2,400 rounds per minute, although normally only 2 guns would fire at once to prevent overheating, so more like 800 to 1,200 round per minute bursts for sustainability. Each gun was fed by a 200-round ammunition chest, so about 20 seconds of continuous maximum rate fire. The M16A1's minimum range versus a 600 mph target was 300 yards or 274 meters, so slightly closer than what the M42 was capable of. It was able to traverse or elevate at 80 degrees per second, or 1 full rotation in 4.5 seconds. This was double the Duster's 40 degrees per second traverse rate, and over triple its 25 degree per second elevation rate. So all in all, the Duster had longer range and more damaging guns, while the M16A1 had a higher fire rate, better ability to manage heat while still having multiple guns up, faster tracking, and a larger magazine. Each M42 was considered an automatic weapons squad. It consisted of 6 soldiers. One was the section leader, a sergeant first class who would also lead the Quad 50 paired with the Duster under a gun section. It also included a squad leader for the Duster itself, a gunner ranking corporal, 2 cannoneers, the artillery term for a loader, and a driver ranking corporal. In terms of assigned armament, everyone was authorized an M2 carbine with the exception of the driver, who was authorized an M3A1 submachine gun. The machine gun squad mirrored the structure, just without the section leader and with assistant AA machine gunners instead of cannoneers. Both the M42 and M16A1 towed a 1.5 ton trailer, while the M16A1 carried an M20 3.5 inch rocket launcher for anti-tank defense. Each automatic weapons platoon had 4 of these sections for a total of 8 fire units, 4 of which were dusters. The platoon HQ included 2 lieutenants, a platoon leader and assistant platoon leader, a master sergeant acting as platoon sergeant. This was the 50s, the NCO rank structure was very different from today, an AA machine gunner, 2 light truck drivers, and 2 radio operators. They rode in a Jeep with a 1/4 ton trailer and a 3/4 ton cargo truck with its own trailer. Everyone was authorized a carbine except for the light truck drivers, who were authorized SMGs. Each automatic weapons battery had 2 of these platoons and a battery HQ. The HQ included an HQ, communications, and maintenance section. So in infantry and armored divisions, the battery had a total of 8 dusters and 8 M16A1s. In airborne divisions, the battery was organized as 3 platoons, each with 2 dusters and 4 quad 50s on the M55 trailer mount. So 6 dusters and 12 M55s in the airborne automatic weapons battery. The self-propelled automatic weapons battalion consisted of 4 firing batteries and a headquarters and headquarters battery. This latter formation was the command and logistical element. Before the 2000s, logistics was in the HQ battery, so it had the battalion HQ with the commander and all the staff officers, and the HQ battery, which had a battery HQ, admin and personnel section, operations, intelligence, and AAAIS section. The last acronym basically meant aircraft observers and surveillance radar, a communications section, battalion supply section, maintenance section, ammo section, and an attached medical detachment. However, with the implementation of the Potomac Army in the late 50s, the automatic weapons battalions were taken out of the division. They'd be core assets that would be attached at 1 per division in the forward core area, and further attached to the division artillery. This was largely to allow increases in the division's vehicles in other areas, such as in armored personnel carriers and aviation. The Duster itself was taken out of active service in the early 1960s, transferred to the National Guard. This coincided with the adoption of the Hawk surface-to-air missile, which reached initial operational capability in August of 1960. It was believed that the anti-aircraft guns in use, which did not have radar guidance, were no longer suitable for air defense deep into the jet age. But the Duster was revived for Vietnam. According to the Army Historical Foundation, the Duster was transferred from the National Guard as the active duty battalions were inactivated around 1960 and they were first deployed in 1966. Finding a minimal air threat, it was employed in the ground support role, acting as convoy security, perimeter defense, and as a reaction force when convoys were ambushed. They could even ride on LCM-8 mechanized landing craft to back up the Mobile Riverine Force. These units were organized a little differently than in the 1950s. There were 3 Duster-armed air defense artillery battalions in Vietnam. 1st Battalion, 44th Artillery in support of the 3rd Marine Division in the 1st Corps, 4th Battalion, 60th Artillery supporting 2nd Corps, and 5th Battalion, 2nd Artillery supporting 3rd and 4th Corps. The battalions consisted of a headquarters and headquarters battery and 4 firing batteries. Each consisted of 2 platoons with 4 guns each, for a total of 8 per battery and 32 per battalion. Guns were typically employed in pairs and heavily decentralized across the Corps' area of operations, although could also be used in larger numbers at battery minus strength, especially when guarding a key point. Each battalion was also augmented with a towed quad 50 battery, with 3 8-gun platoons often employed in the back of a M35 deuce-and-a-half truck, as well as an artillery searchlight battery. Which automatic weapons battalion each battery was attached to is on screen now. The autocannon armament and light tank levels of protection made them kind of equivalent in firepower to a modern infantry fighting vehicle, although they weren't troop carriers. Really, they basically did the jobs similar to what armored cars like the M8 Greyhound and Cadillac Gauge Commando had played in the region. After Vietnam, the Dusters were returned to the National Guard. Divisional air defense battalions had come back by the 1970s, but this time with a mix of M163 Vulcan SPAA and Chaparral surface-to-air missile batteries. The Duster did continue service in the National Guard into the 1980s though, when it was taken out of service for good. I recently did a collab with Oxide where he tests Canadian infantry gear and I talk about their infantry section organization and typical ammo loads, so go check it out and tell him I sent you.